Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today I'd like to show you how I made this card. It's a very pretty little card using that lovely Country Floral embossing folder. This is my prototype, and I'm making these cards here, and it says on the front, thank you, and on the inside it says, to think of you is to smile, and then it's got a rose stamp on the inside, and it's got, of course, that gorgeous rose on the embossing. And these are going to be my swap cards for convention in April. And so it's coming up quickly, so I've got to get mine done. And I'm going to do these in several colors, and so this was the first of the ones that I made. I've tried all different kinds of things, and today I'm going to mix up my colors, and we are going to do this in Highland Heather. So what we need to do this is we need a piece of Highland Heather. Let me get these out of the way. 8.5 by 5.5 scored and folded at 4 1/4, and then I have 2 pieces of Whisper White here that measure, let's see, these measure 4 1/4 by 5. I want to leave a nice big rim around this one so that we can see the purple behind it. And I have 2, one for the inside and one for the outside. Then I have a piece of Highland Heather that is cut 4 1/4 by 5 inches. And then I have one more piece of Highland Heather that is cut 2.5 inches by 5 inches. And that piece is going to go here. Now, I'm using the embossing folder, the Country Floral embossing folder here, and at 4 1/4 that piece fits in here exactly to the measurements of the smallest piece of the embossing folder. And then I moved mine right down to the bottom edge, closed my folder, and ran that through the embossing folder. And this is the lovely piece that I get. Now this is kind of fun because I'm going to cut this in half, and then that will make 2 cards. So I'm bringing up my trimmer here, and I am going to cut this piece at 2 1/8, which is exactly half of this card. And I'm going to run my blade up and down a couple of times here to cut through all of that embossing. If it gives you a little trouble, you can always turn it over and put a mark on the back and cut it with your scissors. Sometimes the embossing catches on the blade. But there I've got 2 lovely pieces then to make my piece that's going to go across here. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is grab a piece of scratch paper here and my Stampin' Up! White, Whisper White craft ink. And I'm going to take a dauber here, and I'm going to put this piece here, and I am going to just go over the top of the flowers here and any of the raised portions. I thought this look was just so pretty, and it just gives a softness to this card that I don't think you could get any other way. Now, it looks like I'm laying on the white fairly heavy, and I am, and part of the reason for that is the craft ink, once it's on and it dries, it fades to much lighter color. So putting it on fairly generously is just fine. And so we're going to set that aside and let that dry, because that craft ink takes a minute to dry. Meanwhile, we can do some stamping. I set up all of my stamping on my Stamparatus, and I did that because I'm going to be doing production, which means I'm going to be making several. For convention, I make 50 to 60 of these stamps, these cards, and I'm going to do these, like I said, in a couple different colors. So it's easiest if I can cut a whole bunch of pieces and then stamp and set aside, stamp and set aside, and then assemble them all at the end. So I'm going to bring in my chamois here and wipe down my stamps here. I've got them set up, and I set this one up, one on one side of the door and one on the other side of the door, because one is photopolymer and the other is red rubber. And so the red rubber is at a different height than this, and you can't put them on the door and have them stamped the same. So this one, for instance, needs to be set up. I need to turn this around and pick this one back up again here. So I'm sort of centering that in the middle towards the top. Let me get that so that it is straight. And then I can pick that up with that door. And then it'll be all ready to stamp on the second piece. In fact, now I've put a mark on my card, so I'm going to turn this over. And I've got a little Stampin' Spot that I made to do the stamping, because I find them to be a little easier to use on the Stamparatus. And this one I just inked, so I'll probably have to stamp this a couple of times. But this is for the front of the card to put my thank you there, and actually it did a pretty good job. So I think that one is done, so I can set that aside. But you can see where if you had 25 of these, you could just keep putting them in and stamping them quickly and moving on down the road. Now this one is set up to do the inside. So this one I'm also going to put my message here in the middle. To think of you is to smile. So I'm going to stamp that one down here. Oops, I forgot to put my magnets in place there. And it looks like it just about got everything, but I'm going to do it one more time just to make sure. And hopefully it's in the same spot. There we go. To think of you is to smile. That's all ready to go. And now I'll move my magnets to this side and turn my door around like this. Ink up my rose here and stamp my rose down here in the corner. And that looks to me to be pretty good. So there we go. Everything is all stamped and ready to go on our card. So I will set the Stamparatus aside here, and if I were, and after the video, I'll probably end up sitting here and doing, sort of 10 of each, then decide what other colors might work well with this. Okay, so now I think we're ready to assemble this card. So I have my card front here, and I'm just going to burnish this edge again to get this to lie as flat as I can. And this thank you, I think I'll put all of the pieces on this. The first thing I'm going to do is to put these two pieces together, because I'm going to put a little bit of rim and trim on that, and I want to do that before I set this down on my card. And this is cut 5 inches by 2.5, and then this one was cut in half at 2 1/8 by 5. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use snail, but I'm going to use the solid blue snail here, and I'm going to put a lot of snail down on this piece because it's got so many uneven surfaces with this embossing, and I really want to make sure this stays put. So I'm going to set this up so that it has a similar border top to bottom and is centered on my piece of Highland Heather here. I think that looks pretty good. And you see that softened up a little bit, that white softened up just a little bit. I just love the look it gives. Okay, so then I have ribbon. And what I have is this 1/8 of an inch sheer ribbon, it's called. There it is. Things go crazy on here. And on the original card, which I have here, I put 3 pieces of ribbon down and then tied a double bow, and I think it's too many pieces of ribbon. So what I'm going to do on this is put down 2 pieces of ribbon and the double bow. So I'm just going to put some snail along the back of this panel here so that I can start my ribbon here, get it anchored down, and then come around the ribbon, around the card piece here, nice and straight. Let's see how straight that looks. Pretty good. And then I'm going to swing it over and set it up so that it will wrap a second time, right next to the one that is already on there, coming right up, then going around the back and anchoring on my glue back here. Then I'm just going to snip off this piece. There we go. And I'm going to make a double bow. Now, if you've been starting to follow my tips and tricks, on Sunday I'm going to do a video that talks about how to make easily a double and a triple bow. Today I'm just going to use my fingers because it's easier for me to do, and I'm going to show how to use a bow maker with the pegs, as well as how to do it on your fingers. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because in just a day, but I can tell you, you start with your ribbon here, you go like a figure 8 around your fingers, and this first one creates the first loop, second loop, first loop, second loop, and this is a fairly small bow. It's easier to do with bigger ribbon and bigger bows, especially if you're using your fingers, just because our fingers are not pencil thin. And then you come around the back and push this up to tie and secure your bow. And this piece that you've wrapped around is what cinches the bow. But I'll do this in very slow motion and with lots of attention to detail on Sunday on my YouTube video. Okay, so that's all done. Now I'm going to tease this off my fingers and put it into place on my work. And I'm going to do that with a glue dot. If I can get it off my fingers, that is. I wanted a fairly small bow, and that's hard to do on your fingers, so I was pulling this pretty tight. So there's my bow, and you can do it so that you train both of your tails down the direction you want, and you end up with a pretty good knot on the front side. Now I'm going to take a glue dot here and my pokey tool, and I'm going to take the whole glue dot and stick it on the back so that I cover the knot and the tails exactly the way I want them to sit on my bow, on my work. And then you can add a second glue dot to the back to just cover the tails. In fact, on this, I think I will. This one I'm going to fold in half because I don't need a huge surface, but this tail is getting a mind of its own and I want it down. So I'm going to put that right here between the two pieces, and I think that looks a bit better. I think this one looks a little out of sorts with 3. 2 I think is perfect. Okay, so there we go. Now, because the floral folder has so much dimension to it, I don't think there's any need to raise this panel for any more dimension. Plus, we've got the bow on there. So I am going to, first of all, put this on this piece, and I'm going to set this down. It should go from end to end, and that way I get not quite a 1/4 of an inch below, and yet my Stamparatus allowed me to set this up so that I have a tiny little margin between this panel and the top of, or the bottom of my words. Then this is going to go on here. Oh, I think that is just so pretty. All right, so more snail, and I'm going to use again the stronger snail, which is the full strip, and this is the Stampin' Up! Snail here. And I'm going to set that in place, not upside down. Right side up would be good. And giving myself the same margin all the way around my card. And there it is. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that pretty? I just love this idea of the craft ink on here. All right, so next I'm going to put some snail on this other piece that we've stamped, and you can see while it is really a very pretty card, it's not very complicated and not difficult at all, especially with the Stamparatus, so that you can get everything stamped right the way you want it straight away. And again, you could crank out several of these in a hurry if you chose to. So there's our card pretty much done. I'm going to move some of these things out of the way and grab my rhinestones here. Use my pick tool to chase this little rhinestone and put it down on my card. And maybe one over here. I like to do this in odd numbers whenever possible, and maybe one right down here on the bottom. And oh, it looks a little bare there now. I'm going to add another one there. So there we go. There's my project for the day. And so there's the blue card using Balmy Blue, and here it is in Highland Heather, and it'll be fun to figure out how many more colors I'm going to do. Like might say I make 50 or 60, and so maybe I'll make 10 each of 5 or 6 different colors. But there is the project for today. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator. Or you could join my team. Having you on my team would be lovely. The materials here can be ordered. The folder is still free for a $50 order between now and the end of the month, which is next Monday the 30th, or Sunday the 31st of March. And so, can you imagine this is a free product? It's absolutely stunningly beautiful. And I understand that they're going to carry this over, but it won't be free. And so if you want to get it quickly, you have to do it by Monday, or Sunday, I mean, in order to get it as a free item. And then it will be in the catalog in June. So there will be a period of time that you won't be able to get it. But so if you want it and you want it quickly, a $50 order will do it. So, and you can get to my shop at www.lbedinger.stampinup.net or on my blog, www.inkandingenuity.com. The links are listed below. And if you want to talk about maybe becoming a demonstrator and getting a discount on your products, my number is always listed below the video, and I'd love to talk to you. So that's it for me today. I'll be back. Oh, my prize for the month of March. If you get on to my site and make an order, that's all it takes is an order of any amount, puts you in the drawing, and it's the Wonderful Romance Bundle this time. And also through the end of the month is the last of the join offer, $175 worth of product for $99. So a lot to think about in this last couple of days of the month. Anyway, I'll be back soon with more cards and more projects. Bye.